Yeah, thanks, Alpa. My name is Nikola Ilic. I'm originally from Belgrade in Serbia, but I live in the beautiful city of Salzburg in Austria for the last almost 6 years, where I work as an independent consultant and trainer. You can find me also on web. I'm regularly blogging at data-mozart.com. I'm also active on social media like LinkedIn and Twitter, so feel free to ping me or connect if you like. With that in mind, I will hand over to Alpa, and just to mention that I'm extremely happy that I could have joined you for this session.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. So now let's start with today's agenda. Uh, can you please make my slide? Yeah, let's start with today's agenda. So initially, we are going to give you a very quick overview of these three services, and we show you quick tour as well. And in fourth part, we're going to see a demo using those three to refresh your Power BI datasets. So now let's start with first one, which is Azure Data Factory. So what is Azure Data Factory? So Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based data integration service that orchestrates and automates the movement and transformation of your data. It is a Azure platform as a service, and it's a serverless. Because of these two reasons, you don't need to worry about compute infrastructure, software installation, or web server configuration. Azure will do it for you. So you can fully focus on implementation, and because of that, you can very quickly build your solution, and you can deploy it in a production as well. And because of above two reason, you only pay for what you have used. If your Azure Data Factory is running, then you will get charged. Otherwise, there is no charge. However, you will get very small amount of charge for storage, but it can be negligible. And last but not least, it's a low-code or no-code solution. So you can very quickly build your pipeline using drag and drop. And you can integrate it with other Azure service like Azure Machine Learning, Azure Cognitive Service, Azure Databricks. So you can use machine learning as well here without writing a code. So this is a Azure Data Factory. Now let's move into key components of Azure Data Factory. So there are 5 different key components of Azure Data Factory. So let's start first one, which is the link services. If you compare this with connection manager with SSIS, then it's the same. It's hold the connections for your data source, and it's authorize your data source, so you can use for a other component in Azure Data Factory. So this is a link service, which is nothing but hold a connection sync for your data source. Next one is the datasets. Datasets is nothing but it's a structure of your data or metadata about of your data. So for example, if your link service hold the connection for your Azure SQL server, then your data sets in form of table. But if your link service hold the connection sync for REST API, then your data set in form of a JSON. So that is a data sets. So once you have created link service and you create data sets, then now you ready for creating pipelines, and your pipeline can have activities. So third one is activities. Activity do a specific task. For example, copy activity, copy your data from one source to another source. Machine learning activity allow you to execute a machine learning task in Azure Data Factory. So in Azure Data Factory, you have many activities available, which I show you during the demo. So that is activity. Fourth one is a pipelines. So pipeline is a logical group of your activity. Here activity can be in sequential or in parallel, and it perform a specific business requirement. So that is called a pipeline. So once you have a pipeline ready, someone need to call your pipeline. So triggers comes into picture, and you can trigger it by various different way, which we'll show later on this session. So these are the 5 main components. apart from that, there is one more component which is the integration runtime. But at the moment, you don't need to worry about that unless you're using the VNet or on-premise data source. Then you need to worry, and then you need to use SSI's integration runtime or a self-hosted integration runtime. Otherwise, Azure will provide you a default integration runtime. So you don't need to worry about that in initial stage. So those are the 5 main components. Now let's move into what can you do in Azure Data Factory, so you get idea why you should use Azure Data Factory. So first one is copy data. If you want to copy your data from various different sources, one form to another form, then you can use a Azure Data Factory with a copy activity, and you can do it very quickly without writing a code. So here I'm giving you sample data source, like for example, other cloud service like AWS, Google Cloud, on-premise system like SQL Server, Oracle Server, systems like Salesforce, CRM 365, or a custom activity like Azure Function, HTTP web call, or REST API, or a ASAP. So this is a sample data source you can use as a source, and you can use them as a sink or vice versa. So in Azure Data Factory, they are providing more than 100 data source for copy data activity, which you can use and you move your data from one form to another form. So this is the link which help you to find out which data source you can use as a source or as a sink or both of them. So this is called a data movements. So for data movement, you can use Azure Data Factory. So now let's move into next one, which is a transformation. So if you want to do a data transformation, then you can use Azure Data Factory. So behind the scene, they use the Spark cluster and it's spin up, and you don't need to worry about Spark linkage as well, because you just do drag and drop modules. So these are the sample data source which you can use for data transformation using the mapping data flow in Azure Data Factory. And you can apply a transformation on them, and you can store into different form of the data source. So in Azure Data Factory, for mapping data flow, there are around 12 data sources is available, but recently they have added 4 more data sources. So around 16 data sources now available which you can use. So if data source is not available here, then you can use a blob storage. You can load your data into blob storage, and then you can use a transformation. So this is the link which help you to find out which data source you can use as a source or as a sink or both of them. And this is called a data transformation. So for data transformation, you can use a Azure Data Factory. So now let's see what else you can do in Azure Data Factory. So when you create those 5 components in Azure Data Factory, behind the scene, it generates a JSON code. However, you don't need to worry about it at all because it's automatically generated for you. And this code you can use for a source control for your CI/CD pipeline for continuous integration and continuous deployment. So that's you can do it in Azure Data Factory. It's provide a inbuilt Git integration. So using the UI, you can very quickly connect your data source with a Git integration like DevOps Git or GitHub Git, which I can show you later on as well. It helps you to monitor your pipelines and other components of Azure Data Factory using the UI. It helps you to manage your components of Azure Data Factory using UI. Last but not least, it helps you to trigger your pipeline. You can trigger your pipeline with a various different way. You can trigger your pipeline based on specific time, like early morning, end of the day, like that. You can trigger your pipeline when file has created or deleted from your blob storage. You can create your own custom activities. For example, Azure Function, you create Azure Function to trigger your pipeline. You can use a logic apps, you can use a PowerShell, or you can write down a code in C#. So this way you can trigger your pipelines. So this is a quick overview of Azure Data Factory. Now let's go to demo. So before we go to demo, I have shared here link in that link, I have already documented how to create your first Azure Data Factory, how to create your first Azure Data Factory pipelines, how you create a link service, how you create data set, how you set up your Git repository, how you create your pull request, and how you create feature branch. That all kind of things I already mentioned in step by step. So you can go through that later on, and if you need more help, then you can contact me as well. So with that, let's move into browser now. So this is my first data factory, for example. So when you create your first data factory, it look like this. Then you um, I'm sharing my browser, but it's not showing there. Huh? Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, so when you create your first data factory, it look like this. Then you need to open and launch your studio, like open Azure Data Factory Studio. So it will look like this. So this is your first landing page. And here you can see that you do injection, orchestration, transformation. You can configure your SSIS package. You can browse, you can see your browse history. And you can see here a few tutorials and videos if you like to go through that. And then let's see first tab. So this is a manage tab. So here you will manage your Azure Data Factory related resources. You can create link service, you can view link service, you can create triggers, and you can view triggers as well here. And you can do many more things in here. So this tab is for manage, and this is for monitoring. So here you can monitor your pipelines, your trigger runs, integration runtime, or you can set up alerts as well. When, for example, performance is lower than certain points, threshold points, then you can get an email if you set up an alert. And that's, you can easily create alerts, and it's a few button clicks away you can do that. So this is a monitor tab. Now author tab. This is the main tab. Here you will create your pipeline, data set, data flow, and a Power Query. I have already documented them how you can do that, but I can very quickly show you here. So you can add here, or you can click here in 3 dots, and you can create new pipeline. So you can rename here as well. And you will see if someone is using your pipeline, then you will get idea who is using based on that related tab. Here you will see who is using as well, but at the moment no one using, so there is nothing. And then these are the activities in middle part. So you can see that here are various different activities available. Movement and transformation activity, Azure function, general activity, have these kind of all activities. And you have control activities as well. So these all are the activities. So let's add a simple one, which is wait activity. See, you just need to drag and drop. You can rename it, and you set a property. Instead of 1 second, you set 2 seconds. That's it. So this is your first pipeline, and you can run it by just clicking there. And you can monitor here as well after it's finished execution. So this is the one. You can see status as well, success, fail, or in progress, or queuing. You can see error message as well if there is error. And you can trace out as well by clicking on a Google icon or in and out arrow. So this is your first Azure Data Factory, and you can set up a Git repository by clicking here. So for that, you have to select your repository type. You have to create your directory. You have to create, select your organization. You have to select a project, and you need to create repository. This all I have mentioned in my documents. That's it. And you have to create new branch or select branch, and that's it. Apply this. So this way you set up your Git repository as well. Let's see for a few seconds. Yeah, that's it. So it's done now. So now you have already set up your Git repository with Azure DevOps. And I have already mentioned how to create new branch, how to create pull requests, and those kind of thing in that document. So this is a very quick overview of Azure Data Factory. Now let's go back to slide, and I think we were here, logic apps. So yeah, so now next topic is what is logic apps. So logic apps is a cloud-based platform for creating and running automated workflow that integrate your apps, data, service, and system. It's very, very good service. You can integrate with the data or app or even IoT as well. And if we need to see example, then for example, if you like to schedule a automated schedule email automatically, then logic apps will work. You can schedule it, and logic apps will send email as well using the connector. So logic apps has a different connector like SMTP, Office 365, Outlook, Gmail. Those are the connectors is available, and logic apps easily send emails. So you can create a workflow which schedule and send an email. Or when file is come to particular folder and you want to process automatically and move into blob storage, you can use Azure Logic Apps. Or if you want to know sentiment analysis of a tweet related to your customer service or product, you can find out a sentiment analysis on that feedback based on a tweet posted, and then you can improve your service, and you can use at that time logic apps. So these are the basic example of logic apps where you can use it. So also it is cloud-based serverless engine. So you don't need to worry about hosting, scaling, managing, monitoring, and maintaining your solution. Azure will do it for you. So you can very, very quickly build your workflow here. Here you can choose a consumption plan, base plan. So you only pay for what you have used. So if you are not using logic apps, then you won't get any charge. Also, it is a no-code or low-code solution. So you can very quickly build by just drag and drop output of one component. You can join with input of other components. That way you can very, very quickly build it is. And it provides more than 200 connectors like SMTP connector, tweet connector, Twilio connector, like so many connectors available. And if connector is not available, you can build your own connector and you can use that. Like for example, you have a application or system which is in COBOL base, then you can build your custom connector and then you can use them in logic apps. So you don't need to worry about syntax of COBOL or anything. Logic apps will do it by themselves. You just need to build your connector, that's it. So this is the logic apps. You can find more information here. And before we go to demo, I have already uploaded one document in my GitHub. So here you can find how you can create your first logic apps, how you can test them, how you can use that in via Postman as well to test your logic apps, and few scenarios as well. So now let's go back to again to browser. So this is my first logic apps. So when you create your first logic apps with that steps, you will see this page. And here you can see that overview. So you will find out your logic apps name and few other information here. If your logic apps already run, then you can see run history or trigger history as well. And you will find out if there is an issue or how it worked or like that. And here you can see that you can run your logic apps, you can delete them, you can disable them, you can clone them, you can copy them as well. And here is the design. So this is look like that when you create your first logic apps. And logic apps must have a trigger. So first step is to choose your trigger, which is a condition, based on which condition you want to execute your workflow. So trigger is the first step. So these are the triggers at the moment available. but you can create your own trigger as well. And based on that, it will execute your workflow. So here you can see that there are already existence template available, ready-made for you. You can just use them and just change information, authentication information regarding your connector. So let's create here. So this is HTTP trigger, and when you click here, it's an action. So let's see Gmail, because we want to send an email. So you will search here that, and you will get directly like that way. So we want to send email, that's it. And you can do more parameterized, but I'm just doing it here. So that's it. So this done, my workflow is done. I can save it and I can run it. So here I have a connector, so I have already added my Gmail information, and you can run it by just clicking there. So it will execute it and it will send me email in a few seconds. So that is a workflow. You can build it using the logic apps. And you will see here, if I go to overview, you will see here history as well. It's still running, so but it will success or fail, you will see it here. So this is a very quick overview of logic apps. Now let's go back to slide, and I think it's a Power BI now. So my friend Nicola will do this. Nicola, over to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alpa. I hope that you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Okay, I shared.
Yes, screen is there. I'm not sure it's mine or your. Yeah, it's your, I think. Yeah.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, thanks, Alpa. So let's do a quick, like a whirlwind tour around Power BI and its main components, just to put it in proper context before you show in the final demo how Azure Data Factory, Logic Apps, and Power BI work in synergy to show all the capabilities that you already explained to us. So first of all, let's quickly explain what is a Power BI. Basically, Power BI is a part of a broader ecosystem which is called Power Platform, and Power BI targets business analysts, business intelligence professionals, data analysts, because it enables you to collect data, to connect to disparate data sources, collect the data, perform different transformations, data cleaning, and so on. And finally, you can build visually appealing reports or dashboards, and you can also share the content you've created with Power BI. But more on that in the next few minutes. So this is let's say a book definition of Power BI. So it's a collection of different services, software services, applications, and connectors that work in synergy to enable you to, as I said, collect data from different data sources and put them into coherent and visual immersive interactive insights. There are two main components to understand in Power BI. Those two components are desktop and service. Power BI desktop is basically a standalone application, Windows application that you can install on your machine in two different ways. You can use regular installation file, or you can download it from Windows Store. The only difference is that if you download Power BI desktop from Windows Store, all the updates, because Power BI is updated each month, all the updates will be automatically pushed, and you will always run the latest version. Data that you consume from Power BI can be, as I said, in multiple different places. So it can be Excel spreadsheets, CSV files. It can be in cloud sources like Azure SQL Database or Synapse or something like this, all the way down to on-prem data sources like SQL Server, like Oracle, MySQL, or other relational databases. So basically, Power BI, first thing that Power BI enables you is to connect to different data sources. Then after that, you can model your data. So it gives you possibility to enhance your data model, to build a so-called semantic model, and using two different languages, M language in Power Query or DAX language, to enhance your model with additional calculations, to include additional tables, and so on and so on. As I said, you can improve your model with DEX calculations, and finally, you can use all those things that you've built to visualize your data and offer your report consumers a nice and visually appealing way to understand what is happening behind those numbers. Finally, once you are done, once you finish your work in Power BI Desktop, you can publish your report to Power BI Service or Power BI Report Server if you're using on-prem version of Power BI, where other colleagues and other users can collaborate on those reports, and this content, this Power BI content, can be shared within the organization, mostly within the organization. Here is the link where you can find out more about Power BI essentials. Now I want to discuss just those basic components of Power BI. As I said, Power BI Desktop is a Windows application, and it's a report authoring tool. So you will go to Power BI Desktop and create your reports. You will connect to data, you will apply different data transformations, you can generate new columns, and finally you will build your data model. Once you're done with authoring report in Power BI Desktop, you can publish this report to Power BI Service, where you can share, you can build dashboards. So this is a feature that is exclusively available in Service, and share your reports through apps. Power BI, main purpose of Power BI Service is for sharing and collaboration, and also very important component for ETL stuff in Power BI Service are data flows. Very interesting concept, but since this is just an introduction to Power BI, we will not spend time going deep and explaining how data flows work. Finally, the third component is Power BI mobile apps, which is just a way to share and consume reports via mobile apps on iOS and Android or Windows mobile devices. Okay, I want to show you a quick tour of Power BI, and I assume that some of you are maybe not familiar with the interface and everything else, so I will just do a quick introduction. This is how Power BI Desktop looks like when you once you open it. So the main things are here on the left. Those three icons here lets you switch between different views within the Power BI Desktop. This one, which is the default one, is a report, and there you create your visualizations. At this moment, I don't have any data in my Power BI Desktop, so I will show you how it is easy to connect to a data and import it in Power BI. So I will click here in the ribbon on Excel workbook, and I will choose one Excel file that is stored on my machine. Click on open, and I will wait for a few moments for Power BI to connect to this data source and import data within the Power BI Desktop. I can select my table, and I can select to transform my data. For example, you want to include additional columns, you want to clean your data, to understand data distribution. In other words, to do a simple data profiling before you import it in Power BI Desktop. So I have some columns here, never mind. So for example, this one is full of nulls. I don't need it. I can just simply remove those columns and don't import it in Power BI. I can also, for example, change the data type of the column. For example, this order date, which is in my case numeric field, I want to display it in a user-friendly way as a date. So I will change the type of this column to date. And you see that this is Power Query Editor. Sorry, I forgot to mention this. Power Query Editor is a built-in tool within Power BI that enables you to perform more than 300 different transformations over your data sets. And what's the best thing? Two best things regarding Power Query Editor is that, first of all, you don't need to write any code. You can if you want to perform advanced transformations, but you don't need to. So everything is done through user interface. And the second best thing about Power Query Editor is that all transformation steps that you've applied, so for example, like removing columns or changing types, like you can see that I did here, every time I go and refresh my data set, these transformation steps will be automatically applied and my data will be shaped the way I want in my report. So once I'm satisfied with this, I can just hit close and apply, and let's wait for a few moments for Power BI to import this data. Okay. As I said, those three icons here, those three different types of views enables you to switch between report view, which is basically report canvas where you build your visualizations. The second one, let me show you once it's loaded. Okay, so it's loaded. The second one here, table view or data view, shows your data in a tabular form, like let's say in Excel. So it's easier to see in this way. And finally, model view lets you create relationships between your tables. In this example, I have only one table, but in case I've imported multiple tables, I can create relationships between those tables and build Power BI data model. Other than that, here in visualizations pane, you can choose between one of the many built-in visuals, or you can also enhance your reports by importing custom visuals from App Source Marketplace. Let me just quickly show you how one report, how you can build one visual in literally 20 seconds. So I'm using this stacked column chart, and I will put order quantity as values, and I will put order date on my axis. Okay, and one more thing I want to show here is date hierarchy. I can drill down or drill up through my data. So that depends on the specific structure within your data set. And you can see that in literally 20 seconds with 3 or 4 clicks, I was able to create a nice looking visual, which can be then formatted, of course. Under visualizations, you have this format pane where you can set a whole range of different properties for your visual, like colors, like dynamic things, borders, and so on and so on. Okay, so since we are short with time, this is just a short introduction to Power BI and its main purpose. I will hand over now to Alpas because she wants to show you how you can merge all of these three tools to have a fully functional analytics solution. So Alpa, I'm stop sharing and handing over back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola. Can you share my screen? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so now this is last demo. So here we are going to use all three services like Power BI, Azure Data Factory, and Logic Apps, and we use Azure SQL table as well. So when data is loaded into our Azure SQL table, after that immediately want to refresh our Power BI dataset. So before that, let's see a problem statement. So for example, you would like to use Azure Data Factory and Logic Apps, or you already have them, both of them or one of them. You have Power BI data sets, which is imported one as well. And frequency of the referencing your data set more than 8 times or 48 times, depends on which license you have per day. Or you would like to refresh your data set when data is loaded in a data warehouse or in Azure SQL table or something like that. So once, as long as that loaded, immediately you want to trigger to refresh your Power BI dataset. Or you would like to use as a part of orchestration, then this solution will work for you. So now let's see high level design of that. So for that we have Azure Data Factory, and it has a pipelines and it do orchestration, and it has more than one pipelines. We have a key vaults which hold the secrets, and we have a logic apps which wait for a request, HTTP request, and which refresh the Power BI dataset. So here, pipeline 1 or sequence of pipeline will do a transformation, process your file or data, and load into database in Azure SQL database or warehouse. After that, immediately you have another pipeline which run immediately after first pipeline, and it have a web activity, and this web activity call a logic apps, and logic apps will refresh your Power BI, which use the Power BI REST URL as well. So this is a one way. Or another way, if your warehouse or data warehouse or a Azure SQL table is loaded by somewhere, by some third party tool, and then also you would like to check it that they have a new data arrived on the table or not, and based on that you want to refresh your pipeline, Power BI data set, then this is the another scenario. So here logic apps will trigger and it refresh your Power BI data set, or it insert a data into your Power BI data set. You can add a row or you can refresh it, and then it come back to Azure Data Factory pipeline. So this is the solution we have used, and here we have used the second option. So where like table is already there and it's loaded by someone by somewhere else. Even though you can check in your logic apps, Azure Data Factory, and you triggered your logic apps to refresh your Power BI data sets. So let's stop this one because I want to share a browser. So for that, let's see, this is a key vaults I have used, and these key vaults hold the secrets here. So it has a secret for a client ID, client tenant ID, and client secret, as well as it has a connection string for Azure SQL database, because I have used Azure SQL database. So this is a one thing. You have to provide permissions here for your Azure Data Factory. So this is the key vaults. Let's off that. And this is the logic apps. And this is, you can see run history as well, because I have already run logic apps for so many times. If there is errors also, then also you can see here, it's like this red mark, and then you can open it and you will see history as well. So you will get idea where to fix. And this is a logic app design. So you can see that I have a request, and here you have URL. This URL you can copy from here and you can use it in your Azure Data Factory. So it will call this logic apps. And this is the action or workflow, which what it do, it refresh your Power BI data sets. So here you need to provide your Power BI workspace and you provide a data set. But if you want to insert a rows, then you have to provide a Power BI workspace, Power BI data set, and table or a chart which you want to update or refresh. So this is a logic apps. And this is Azure SQL database. It's a very simple database. It has a simple table, and whenever new user will arrive into this table, I would like to refresh my Power BI via Azure Data Factory. And this is Azure Data Factory. So here I have two link services. One which is Key Vault, because I'm accessing the secret from Key Vault. So I have a link service for create Key Vault. And another one is for Azure SQL database, because here I'm not using the static database name or like that, but I use it via Key Vault. So you can see that I am selected that Key Vault, and then you can see that this is my secret name. So this way you can connect it. So tomorrow if you want to change another database for that secret, then you don't need to change Azure Data Factory pipeline. You just use same Key Vault, but Key Vault have a different connection string. So that is the Key Vault's link service. And you can see who is using, three people are using here. You can see that it's these two pipelines and one data set. So that is that. And now let's move into pipeline. So this is my pipeline, which is this. This one, if you want to do only and only via Azure Data Factory, and you don't want to create logic apps or Azure function or Microsoft workflow or Power Automation, then also you can refresh your Power BI using this way. So you can access secrets via Key Vaults from web activity, then you generate token, then you call your Power BI REST API URL in here, and then you will check as well that it's refreshed successfully or failed. So this way you can do that. So this is only and only in Azure Data Factory, you refreshing Power BI without using the logic apps. So that is first solution, and this is another solution. So here you using the Azure Data Factory, Azure Logic Apps, and Power BI. So here someone has already populated my Azure SQL table. So my lookup activity will check and see if new data arrived or not in here in that table. And once it's successfully arrived, it will check here if is new data available, then and then it will execute Power BI logic apps, and logic apps will refresh your Power BI. So this is a logic apps URL. That's it. If you need to pass any message like user more information, then you can paste in a body as well. And after that, I'm just updating my table again. So next time, if I run this, it shouldn't be run. Let's run it. So because at the moment, it won't do anything in if activity because data is not available, new data is not there. So it's went on if activity, but it hasn't done anything. But if I go to here, and if I insert one record, so and if now I go to here, I refresh it, and if I run this one, then you will see that it will execute activity which I have in my if loop, which basically nothing but it's refreshing a Power BI. So it's taking little bit time. So and while that I can show you here. So you will check your Power BI history here. So at the moment I have only one entry for today's date, which is this one. But let's see here. So it's doing that. See, it has executed logic apps, which is inside my if activity, which is basically here. And yeah, and you can see it finally it updated table original. So if next time I run, it won't go into inside if loop. It won't do anything. And if I want to see here, and if I refresh this one, you will see here 2 entries for today's date. See, these are the last 2. And this one I have just executed. So you can see that it refreshed my Power BI data set. And if you want to check same thing in logic apps, because it's done by logic apps, so you can come here and you can check here. So this is the one, this entry. So you can successfully check that it refreshed my Power BI, and you will see here more information as well, like what is in, what is out, like that. And it will return a status as well, 202, or if failed, then it's return different status. So let's go back to our ADF. So this is another way you can use that. You can use here Logic Apps and Azure Data Factory, or you can do without that, but for that you need to use another solution, which I showed you earlier as well. So let's go back to slide now. Yeah, so with that, let's conclude this session. So we have seen Azure Data Factory, which is a cloud-based integration service, which is Azure Platform as a Service, which is a serverless, which you can build a pipeline using no-code or low-code solution, and you can easily orchestrate, parameterize, and operationalize your pipeline and workflow here. And you can use mainly for ETN and ELT. So that is Azure Data Factory. Next one is Azure Logic Apps. So Azure Logic Apps, it's Azure integration service, and you can easily integrate your app, data, systems, and service using the Logic Apps. Logic Apps also a platform as a service, and it has a serverless engine. You can build your workflow using no-code or low-code solution, and you can use it for automated your workflow. So now next one is Power BI overview. Nicola?
Yeah, thanks, Alpa.
Yeah.
So with Power BI, basically Power BI represents a collection of software services, connectors, and applications that enables you to connect to different data sources, build your data model, visualize your data, and finally share your data with other users within your company or outside of your company. That's regarding Power BI.
Yep. And then next, we have seen that how you can refresh your Power BI dataset using the 3 services. You can either use only Azure Data Factory, or you can use Azure Data Factory and Logic Apps, or you can use only Logic Apps as well. And if you don't want to use any one of them, then you can use maybe Microsoft Workflow or Power Automation, or maybe use Azure Function or something like that. So with that, I would like to thank you for attending this session, and thank you for staying the last session as well. And now we are open with questions. And please do a feedback, because it's helped to all of us.
Yeah, from my side also, thanks for everyone for joining. Thanks, Alpa, for letting me to share the stage with you.
Thank you, Nicola.